good morning, Rick.
Good morning, George. Good to be back at this again. We're going to try to knock out a few more kind of how-to videos, get people introduced to the sport a little bit, maybe educate me if they're even been involved with it for a while. So we're going to dive into a little bit of training today.
And the purpose of these videos is, we're not telling you exactly what to do, but it's to generate questions. It's to get you thinking about things that need to get done. And we were talking this morning, you've been involved with RAAM every year for 18 years, even in COVID.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually 19. I just didn't go on the course in 19, but I was involved with prepping my dad's two-man team. So yeah, and you've been around the sport even longer than that.
This is my 30th year.
That's right. So
1993.
yeah, so we're looking at things like, again, we can't answer every question because there's so many out there. But what we can do is make you think about things, offer some suggestions, get you guided in the right direction. And training is a tricky one because most people think of training as getting on their bike. But when you deal with ultra, there's more than just getting on your bike. Obviously, you have physical training, mental training for some people, and nutrition. They're all really key aspects that can have huge impacts on your races, no matter if you're racing something like a 500-mile race all the way up to RAAM, because those are I find once you get over about 150 miles or so, your body changes a lot, like about what you eat, what you can consume, how you train for it. It really
just
it
the way our
alters.
bodies react to that kind of physical torture treatment that we're giving them. Some people really develop edema, and there's all sorts of things that can happen and go wrong. And you start out with a nutrition plan for the ride. I'm only going to be doing this, and for I'd say a very large percent of participants, that goes out the window
Quickly.
Mhm.
So let's start. Let's actually start with nutrition because it's a pretty base thing. Like even if you're doing a short ride, you have generally eaten something: breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever.
Generally.
And again, everybody treats it differently. But when you get to the longer and longer events, the more nutrition plays into what you're doing in your performance and how you approach it. I think first and foremost, if you don't know a lot about nutrition, it's always good to talk to a nutritionist, get some baseline information, understand what you're doing, and they also need to understand what you're doing. You're not going out for, a weekend ride with your friends, or you're not even doing a century ride. You're doing something that could be as long as 3,000 miles. It could be only 500 miles. And even solos and teams vary a little bit.
So I did my first ultra in 1984, the Spinco 500. I turned 60 last December, and I'm actually going to see a nutritionist because my body's changed a lot. And I've been hit by cars, and it's like there's some changes there, and I want to know what's going to happen because, well, maybe I'm slowing down a little bit. I don't want to lose that competitive. I feel as competitive as ever.
Right, and the things that you consumed, 20 years ago, one, nutrition
It's changed.
just what's available, right? Especially if you're just talking nutrition specific products like your Cliff Bars, Hammer Nutritions, whatever. That has evolved so much in the past years. But even the knowledge of what you consume and how it's used by your body has changed a lot. And I think too many people, they go out on, even if they ride really hard on the weekends and they get some great training rides in, they dismiss too much of the nutrition aspect because generally in your training, you're not doing quite the same things you are in your races.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a pretty important thing to dial in. And one thing you sure want to do is be working on this nutrition before you get to your racing level. And if your race is 500 miles, great. Work on stuff, what works for you at 100, 200, 300 miles, great. Take that into 500. And then if you're using those 500s to get to 1,000 or 3,000, play with them in the 500. Don't show up at the start line never having tested whatever you're going to consume.
Hmm. Yeah, probably my biggest problem is bloating.
Yep.
And I've never had that happen on a 500, but oh my gosh, in RAAM raw, I bloat, and I just love the photos of me in a skin suit.
Yeah. Well, and again, it doesn't need to be the end of your race either.
No.
Maybe you can't ride as hard as you were, but you back off the
You
speed
back
a little
off and you
bit,
take care of it.
and you maybe don't drink mouthfuls, you drink sips and things like that to adjust. And those are all things you need to understand as you go. You need to treat your body, you need to listen to it. Also, one thing we found in my dad's solo race, foods that he really liked at day one, by day 5, he did not like them. Things like strawberries. He loved strawberries. And we gave him some in Kansas, and he asked why we put pepper on the strawberries. And we're like, don't know what you're talking about. So, play with your nutrition. Do things. Just because someone else uses it doesn't mean it's good for you. I hear that a lot. Well, Racer A had a great race, so I'm just copying his nutrition plan.
I'm going strictly liquid.
Strictly, that's another one. Yeah, going strictly liquid. Almost always those plans don't work. Like you said, they fall apart, and your body, like what I can consume is not going to be what you can consume, or even what I need. Those things are really important to understand, and there are very experienced and talented people and educated people that understand the balance of nutrition. But again, they also need to understand what you're doing out there. And your crew also needs to understand what they're feeding you, to make sure you eat and drink. It's not just about water. Water's a really great thing to have around. But when you're out doing athletics at any level, I don't care if you're just out running around the block, you may not just want straight water. You've got to have salts and sugars and everything else mixed in that.
That's I like liquid diet. I really like, not to tout the brand, but I like Ensure or anything like that, because the number of calories you're getting when you drink it. And so it's a really nice thing for me to have in my support van, because it's like, there we go. That was 200 calories.
Yeah, I'm a big fan too of Ensure-like products, whatever they may be. I like them, one, because they taste good.
Mm-hmm.
Now, 10 days of them may not taste so great, but generally they taste pretty good. They're kind of like drinking chocolate milk or vanilla milk or something. They go down pretty easy. They have calories, pretty easy to digest. But I also find no matter what I do, I need some type of solid food. It doesn't. I don't need a steak, but I need something to fill my belly. So whatever that is, like my favorite thing to eat when we've raced together, man, I love like Cheez-Its and salty cracker type things.
Sea salt and vinegar Pringles.
Yeah, anything to get that, for me it's more of a filling myself feeling. Like the calories are fine. I can get those from, the liquid part of it, but it just doesn't fill me up. And I don't want to feel like I just came off a 6-course Thanksgiving dinner, but I want to have something in my stomach. And the other thing that like Ensure doesn't necessarily provide you enough of is salt.
Right.
And you don't need things that are like, fancy salt caplets made by whoever. Like you can literally, table salt is fine.
A can of V8, a 16-ounce can of V8 is 900 milligrams of sodium.
Yeah, so whenever I race, whether I'm doing I don't run long distances, 13 miles, half marathons, that's my cutoff. But I always carry with me a couple Tums, and I usually take a salt tablet about halfway through roughly, just pure salt tablets from, your doctor can get them to you, they cost nothing, and they work wonders. And I don't even like swallow them with water, I just eat them. They're salty, of course, but they take care of that salt aspect. And again, you need to understand what these things do and why you need them. Because I have seen racers on RAAM that the racer was cramping like craziness. They're like, are you getting him any salt? They're like, why does he need salt? I'm like, oh boy, this is not going to go well. So we helped him, got him on the road. He got to where he was going. But, again, understand the basics. You don't need to be a nutritionist. Talking to one is good, but understand what you're doing and definitely work on it.
There's a new drink mix out. Well, it's not new, but liquid IV.
Oh,
Very
interesting.
salty.
Yeah.
Really good flavor. But watch it with any product you get going into whatever ultra you're doing, because a lot of them have caffeine in now. And Liquid IV has a number of different powders that are not caffeinated, but their new pineapple flavor has caffeine. And if you drink that at midnight and you want to get a nap, you really got to be careful with that. Heed, cherry bomb. Oh my gosh, that's such a good flavor. It's got a lot of caffeine in it.
Yeah, and so
So
do
just check.
a bunch of the gels have that now.
Mhm.
And again, not bad things necessarily,
No.
but just know what you're putting into your body. And, there's no need to get into any specific brands. You can go do the research on them, and they're different for everybody. Like, they work differently. People love products. They don't like other products. But definitely caffeine is a tricky one. You want to understand what caffeine does to your body. I know a lot of people prior to ultras, particularly RAAM, stop caffeine several weeks beforehand, and then they started again during RAAM so that they get more effect out of it. But again, it should be a lead-up thing. It should be probably, if not a year's worth of trials to get this stuff dialed in.
And the only reason I brought that up is that it's a very easy mistake for a crew person to make late at night, mixing a drink. You just want to make sure that you're not giving your rider something that's going to keep them awake.
Yeah, well, and it's not like a cup of coffee or a Starbucks double shot or something. It's something that looks the same as everything
Exactly.
else. So you just grab one. Oh, they wanted this. It's like, well, not that one. So think about it. Be prepared for it. It's always good when racing ultras. I think if you're prepping for races, prepping for bigger and bigger races, to have like a feed sheet so your crew can kind of keep track of what you ate, how it affected you.
And what's coming out.
What's coming out? Yep, coming in, coming out. Those are good things, because your digestive system does weird things during RAAM. Sometimes good, sometimes not so good. But all things that you need to consider, and it's not something to be taken lightly or blow off. It's also not something, hey, I got a sponsor, week before this race, so I'm going to do all this stuff, because maybe not. You can still take care of your sponsors, but be careful about what you're utilizing and how you utilize it. So I think that covers, we're not nutritionists, so I'm not going to sit here and tell anyone what to do. I just practice, try it out. There's good people out there, professionals that do it. But again, even a nutritionist, remember, it's your body. You need to tell them how it's impacting how you feel riding and what you do. You did bring up something earlier that I think we can kind of dive into our next topic, if you will. I consider it training. Is, you had a deer hit you and you had a dinged up shoulder from a car. So, you have to get back on the bike, right? Or you don't have to, but you want to keep riding. But descending that big ass hill by your old house is pretty fun, except when deers are launching out of the ditch, and they do that all the time. So again, I think one of the biggest things about ultra stuff is most people are pretty fit when they show up at start lines, physically. They got their legs, they got their lungs, they got everything. But many races, it's what's between your ears. It becomes a mental challenge more than a physical one. So what are some of the tricks you learned over the years of dealing with, like, oh, this sucks, I got a long way to go, or hey, I'm almost done?
It happens every year.
Every single but it
in
does.
any division. It doesn't matter if it's 8-person. Well, I've never done 8, but it happens in 4, it happens in 2, it happened solo, it happened in tandem. It always seems like, oh my God, this is overwhelmingly long.
Yep. In our seminars, we talk about, particularly RAAM and RAW. I think holds true again for any event, no matter the distance. Don't look at it as, okay, well, I started and I have this miles to go. In the case of, let's just choose raw, I have 925 miles to go. That's going to really wear on you. You know, so how we say to approach it is kind of eating the elephant, right? So you're not going to eat it in one bite. I might try, but I don't think I can get an elephant in my body in one bite. So you got to carve it up a little bit. Is it time station to time station? Is it, you know, landmark to landmark? You know?
I mean, it depends on where you are mentally in that event, because time station to time station, I remember at the end of the 95 RAAM, the pharmaceutical company that was sponsoring me, their cameraman was like, "Oh, you've only got 52 miles to go." And I was like, 52 miles? That's 4 hours of riding at my current pace. I don't want to ride for another 4 hours. I mean, that was a long way. And luckily there was another rider right in front of me, and we ended up racing in pretty darn fast. But that just, you know, that person thought they were giving me some motivation at the moment, and it was actually really crushing, because 52 miles sounded so long at that moment. And I looked at him and I was like, "Yeah, you ride 50 miles, buddy." But seriously, that was a time where, or like on a long climb, it's what can we do the next half mile in? What can we do the next mile in? If you can ride at, if you can hold 11 miles an hour over this 4% grade, you know, I'll give you a donut or whatever. It's really break it down. Or when I'm out running, because I do a lot of walking and running with my training now too, but I'll pick out shadows.
Yeah.
Or I'll go phone pole to phone pole. And it's, you run as hard as you can to this phone pole, you walk to the next one. And it always seems like the walks happen between the ones that are really close.
Yep, it always feels that way, doesn't it? So it's interesting you say that, because when I go out and run, I do the exact same thing. And usually I try to run on trail because I prefer it over running on the road. Tree to tree, shadow to shadow. A lot of times I'll say, well, I have to run until I see somebody else pass going the other way, and then I can stop for a little bit. So whatever games you can play. And the other thing, I'm one of those weirdos, I don't know, I like intervals, like I running and riding. I love intervals. And part of the reason I like them is because I know I'm going to stop at X point. So it's not like, okay, well, I got to ride really hard, and I don't know when I'm stopping. I know I'm stopping at that mailbox, or 30 seconds, or 1 minute, or whatever. So I really like them because it gives me benchmarks. So mentally, kind of wrap your head around what works for you. Again, there are mental coaches out there that can also help you deal with situations, stressful, otherwise. But your crew has to know too. You know, you want your crew to find ways to keep you engaged with what's going on.
It's a fun game with the crew.
It is.
Really gets them involved, and it gets your mind off the summit or the time station or whatever it is that you've kind of been focusing on that's maybe getting in your head a little bit, and it gets that broken away.
Yeah. And again, you mentioned it earlier a little bit about, you know, hey, you get there, you can have some ice cream. Like, bribery is awesome. Like, it really helps, oddly enough. And it does.
It's competitive too.
It
it's
is.
Like, okay, you're challenging me. I'm going to take that up.
Yeah, and obviously it gets harder the longer you go. You know, when you make jumps from RAAM, RAO, you know, whatever, to raw to, you know, to whatever, you make these jumps, they're challenging. So you have to be more creative sometimes in the things you do. But also people forget, like, yeah, RAAM's exceptionally difficult, and you kind of compare, you know, raw to RAAM or RAO to raw or whatever, but most people train to race the distance they're racing. So, you know, if they're training to race 500 miles, they're laying it on the line for 500 miles. And same thing with RAAM. You may be racing 3,000, but you're laying it on the line for 3,000. So a lot of times the stressors in your body are not extraordinarily different, because that's what you're prepared to do.
I'm trying to think of the Pavlovian term when maybe you take away something and that's the reward. It's not snapping in my mind. David Stiles, we were going up Yarnell grade in 2016, 2-person raw, and he was being so obnoxious on the microphone, talking in this weird accent, just nonstop. And he goes, and then he pauses and goes, "Hey George, I'll stop this if you get to the next corner at such and such a time." And you talk about picking up the pace. I mean, he
Negative
is just
reinforcement.
Negative reinforcement. That's it.
Yeah, but so again, don't just prepare
But it was funny.
your body. Yeah.
Again, it was like, oh my God, stop. But he was aware of what he was doing.
Yep.
He really knew me, and he knows how to motivate me.
Yeah, and those are ultimately, it comes down to keeping people motivated, because I think every race, no matter how long, you go through ups and downs. I think it was John Hughes, the coach, great ultra cycling coach, and a very good racer, said, all rides, races, whatever, kind of happen in thirds. The first third you're excited, so it's pretty quick. The middle third's freaking miserable because you're nowhere. You're just out there. And then the final third, you're excited again because you're getting to the finish.
But in RAAM, that can be days. I
Right.
mean, it can be
Right. So
you go through that cycle a lot.
yeah, so you ride these ups and downs, good days, bad days, and really what you want to do is do your best to, instead of having them go way up and down, try to moderate the ups and downs and keep you motivated. Have your crew figure out what keeps you going as well, and you yourself. And again, there are coaches out there. Or just figure it out on your own. Say, hey, well, I really like doing this, so I'm going to go focus on that.
Well, and you've got mental written down, which a big part of my mental training is running stairs.
Yeah.
Because you can get in a world of pain so fast.
Yep.
And if it starts getting easier, then you run them 2 at a time. Or,
Yep.
you just can make it that much harder. And it's like, okay, I'm going to start really pushing by this rail, and how long can I hold it? Can I make it to the top? It's so good to just put yourself into those situations where you are challenging yourself in your training.
Yeah, and I think ultimately the key to mental fitness, if you will, is push yourself in training, understand what works and doesn't work, and carry it to the next level as you go. Don't come in and just say, well, I'm just going to go race and it's going to be whatever it is. You need to understand there are going to be good parts and bad parts, and you need to figure out how to smooth those over. Don't get too high, don't get too low. Stay somewhere in the middle and work through it. And don't, again, experience it. Try to remember what works and doesn't work when you go into whatever your bigger event is. And so now the one that everyone associates with all training, and whenever anyone talks about training, it's all physical. It's all your body. It's all your legs, your lungs. And obviously, you got to have that. So again, the first thing I would absolutely do is go find a coach. I think too many people don't put enough emphasis on training properly. And I think one of the big things...
And it's nice having somebody to answer to. I don't care how experienced you are. It's really nice having that person to talk with.
Accountability is huge, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's really easy for us to sit here today and go, I'll do it. I'll say it right now. My objective this afternoon when I get home from work is I'll jump on my trainer for a little bit and ride. But when I get home, I got 2 dogs and a wife and things to do, and it get distracted, and it's real easy for me to go, oh, it's okay, we'll make dinner. But a coach, you're going to have someone to answer to, mm-hmm. and you're going to feel more obligated to go get on that trainer or go outside and do that ride or lift those weights or walk or whatever you're supposed to do. And I think the accountability, huge. And again, you're not just paying these people for daily workouts, right? You're paying for their knowledge and mm-hmm. their understanding and their training. So I work out, not riding, but I work out kind of multi athletic stuff with a friend of mine who is a trainer. Part of the reason I do that, he forces me to get my ass out of bed 2 days a week, puts together a program that takes care of things that I wouldn't necessarily focus on, such as core, flexibility, things like that. But because he's forcing me to do it, he knows how to do it. He's telling me to do things. I'm like, what the hell are we doing? But you walk away feeling good. So again, don't dismiss the accountability and professional aspect of it.
Yeah, right now I'm going to the gym. The weather in Oregon has just been hideous. I ride for an hour before work on the stationary bike, which also is good training because it's mind-numbingly boring. And then I go back after work and ride for 2 hours. But I signed up for a bike fit class, which is you're doing quick intervals on the indoor trainer. You jump off and you do weights and you do core and everything you just talked about, all of which I really need to work on. And I don't want to just do it because I hate working out in the gym.
Right, and so that's another part of training. You know, one of the things, especially in ultra, everyone's like, "Oh, do you just ride like hundreds and hundreds of miles all the time? Oh, is that all you do is live on your bike?" Well, no. As a matter of fact, that's quite often a really bad thing to do. You know, you have to get days, weekends, weeks with a lot of miles. But again, one of the things that people neglect in that, speed, you know, and strength, just general overall CrossFit strength, you know, whether it's hiking, lifting weights, doesn't mean you have to go out and, you know, be a Herculean bodybuilder. But you do need, you're close, you know, but you do need some muscular structure, you know, core strength, because you're in a position, whether it's an arrow position or an upright position, you got a lot of weight on your triceps, your lats, your shoulders, your neck. So you don't want to go in with nothing. And again, it's one thing for racers who are doing, like pro tour racers that are only on their bike for maybe 4 hours in a race. That's just starting your day in an ultra event. So you really need to kind of cross things up and utilize all sorts of strength, you know, all sorts of training. You walk and do stairs, you know, again, impact training, keeps your bones stronger, you know, lifting a little bit of weights, just, you know, get your body used to doing that.
Yeah, and again, it's a break from just being on the bike too.
Yeah, and I think, quite honestly, I do think the biggest thing that's neglected is the speed aspect. So many people think that ultra is just sitting on a bike, and of course, Pete Sayers, you know, when everyone asked him how he set the record, so I just don't get off the bike, I just ride, which is fair, legitimate.
Yeah, but he's fast.
But he's fast.
So I mean, efficiency is that actually is part of training, and that's something that I really liked about with John Hughes, because in his plans, it was when he was working with us on tandem in 2002, we were allowed 30 minutes off the bike, whether we were doing a 30-mile ride, a 6-hour ride, a 15-hour ride, a 24-hour ride, and anything that you did that was more than 30 minutes off the bike, you had to make up at the end.
Yeah.
And when you've done 12 hours in pouring rain and 44 degrees in Corvallis, Oregon, and it's dark and you're miserable, and because you were off the bike for 15 minutes too long, and you've got to stay out.
Yeah, that 15 minutes matters, right? It hurts. And the speed aspect of it, again, you look at people like Michael Nels is a really good example, I think. Even Jonathan Boyer in '86, like, he spent a lot of time off the bike, but he was able to do that, and so was Michael Nels and Tinker Juarez, because they're fast anyway. So they, you know, certainly in the case of Tinker and Jock, they're fast professional bike racers. They train for speed as well as other things, but that speed allowed them to perhaps take more time off the bike than you or I could.
Although Boyer did say
he
had to cut into his sleep in order to beat.
He did. He had to change his strategy. Yeah, absolutely. And Tinker, you know, had he cut more sleep out, he very well could have won as well. But again, the concept is you can't ignore it. Just because you can sit on a bike forever doesn't mean you're going to get there in time. Races are races because they have time cutoffs, and you have to respect that time cutoff. If you had an unlimited amount of time to ride, well, a lot of people could do that.
Well, it's fine. I'm just thinking of Boyer again. He was racing Seacrest in
Yep.
'86, and what did Seacrest do when he came back the next year? He had worked on his speed.
Yeah.
Because he was like, no, I want to be a lot faster.
And Seacrest became an exceptional track racer, I think, wasn't he? Very fast, very efficient. So again, it's a balance. You can't ignore one or the other. You can't just do all speed work and ignore sitting on your bike for a long period of time. But the ability to just sit and ride quite often is not enough to get you to the finish line. And we see it a lot, in particular in RAAM, that people are really good at sitting and riding, but the problem is they're riding really slow.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even Leah Goldstein had that problem, and she worked with John Howard,
Yep.
working more on speed to get her faster. She knew she could ride the bike for however many days, but she needed to be faster. And so John Howard helped get her to that point. So again, and I will go back also, it's really good.
And I think it was specifically on the flats
I-
that they really worked on
I believe
building the speed.
Yep, I believe
Mhm.
you're correct. And again, same thing. All these things hold true for teams. They're all a little bit different, but team racing, you still got to kind of have all these things in your quiver, because you still go through highs and lows. You still need to be able to sit on your bike for a long time and be fast and have the right food. I think one of the other most overlooked things, especially when you're training physical part, everybody knows you got to sit on a bike. Everybody knows you got to be fast. What people really suck at are rest days and time off the bike. And that recovery is equally as critical as a lot of the training. I think Christoph, I know when he's done with his racing season, he takes a little time away from the bike. I don't believe he even rides. I think he literally spends time with his girlfriend. They go on vacation and relax. And I don't know, last I checked, he's pretty good on the bike. And a few days off is certainly not hurting him. And I believe we've had also racers. I think Randy Mowry was one of them. Before he raced solo RAAM, had an injury that kept him off the bike for a little bit, and you encouraged him to still race. You're like, a little time off the bike's not a bad thing. You'll be fine. Randy had a great race. So again, have a coach that you're accountable to, and they will kind of help you dictate speed, endurance and recovery. And I know John, again, I will go back to John Hughes mostly because both of us have worked with him. John's really good at that. John understands recovery is important, and he also understands that you have a life. And I know one of his clients was in a position where he couldn't do the workout that John had given him. And John said, that's fine. You go do what you need to do because that's really important. But that workout stands for tomorrow.
Right.
And everybody, almost every bike racer out there, it's not their job. It's mostly a hobby for all of us. And so we have a life outside of it. You have to go to work every day. I work with bikes every day, but I have to go to work every day. So you need to fit your schedule around training, your training around your schedule, your family, your friends. You can't discount that. You can't discount recovery days, but you got to get the work in.
And needing a mental break. I mean, I've had 2 really stressful weeks at work, and it's like getting on the bike, and it's like just that routine, being able to come to Colorado for 4 days. Yesterday, I just sat with my Chihuahua in my lap and watched movies. And it was awesome.
Yeah.
I dozed.
Yeah, but it works both ways too, right? Because sometimes training is very therapeutic because your day at work sucks, and you're like, you know what? I want to go for a run or a ride, and it just troubles melt away, right? And it feels good.
But right now, I can't commute because even with a great light setup, it's snowing and raining so hard. There's gravel all over the road. There's ice patches. It's pitch black. 5:30 in the evening, and I don't want to get hit.
Yeah.
I do not want to have a wreck. And so going to the gym, for the third month in a row for a 2-hour ride was like, I'm tired of it.
Yeah, I've never experienced it so much. I've never had that kind of burnout feeling
In February?
well, no, like in cycling and adventure racing and stuff like that. I never quite hit that wall, but I did in hockey. Coming out of high school and college. I was playing, coaching, reffing. I was 12 months a year, 5 days a week. I was exhausted, and it was a sport I love to this day. It's my favorite sport in the world. I love it, love it, love it. But after that stint as a player and coach at university, I stepped away from the sport for almost 2 years.
Wow.
I mean, I played a little bit, I skated a little bit, but very little. Like, I went from 5 days a week to 3 times a year. And it was just, mentally, I was crushed. And it was a sport I loved. But when I came back to it, my God, I loved it again. And it was so fun and so good. So give yourself that mental break either way, whether it's you just got to go melt some of the stress, or you just need to walk away from your bike for 5 minutes just because you're sick of seeing it.
Yeah, it's an intense year for me because I was off the bike for a year.
Yeah.
Surgery and walking, and I did a whole lot last year to keep my head in the game, 24-hour walk, but it's not the same as stressing myself on the bike. And so, I mean, there's a lot of respect for RAAM, and having RAAM coming up, I know how bad it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
I know what's coming, and I'm like, and I'm old, and can I get myself in shape to get there? So I know I'm pushing harder than my coach is asking me to, and so backing off is tough. But I'm actually really excited about the mental and riding workouts that are coming up, because I've got we're doing a 500-mile training ride in April, and then I've got that Memorial Day weekend 18-hour ride, 45 minutes. And I look forward to those.
Yeah, so I mean, ultimately, when you get down to it, I think no matter what event you're doing in kind of the ultra world, you're stressing your body. It doesn't matter if it's 500 miles on up to whatever, it's stressful for your body. And be sure leading up to those events, and as best you can during those events, really treat your body well.
Mm-hmm.
Take care of it physically, take care of your mental aspect, take care of your nutrition. Make sure all those things are dialed in as you can get them, because adding stressor on top of the event, you just don't need to do. So I think those are 3 keys that you just can't dismiss prepping for any of these events.
And it's got to stay fun.
Yeah, ultimately, end goal, winning, finishing, whatever, it should be fun. It should be challenging. It should be difficult. It should be freaking amazing when you walk away. And I think training properly on all aspects of your life gets you to the point where it's fun. And it may not be fun at the moment, but at the end, it should be fun. It should be enjoyable. So
we want you to look back with good memories of your event.
Yeah, the ultimate goal of any race, I think, certainly on a race director standpoint, I want you to have the best experience you can have out there. And part of that rests upon you. And so take it seriously, don't blow it off, and show up ready to roll. And I think that kind of wraps up our training, and hopefully that gave some people something to think about.
All right. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you. Till next time.
Thanks for watching.